The reason why I wrote Three Simple Things is because what's in it is actually learnable, and anybody that can open their eyes can do it. And it's very true that simplicity wins and complexity loses. And until you take a step back and find somebody to support you that will make you and demand that you're better, you're always going to be stuck in adversity.
Hey everyone, this is Rod Cade, and welcome to this week's episode of Rocket Motivation. This week's guest is a retired Navy SEAL who served with the U.S. Navy for 23 years with distinguished valor. He served in 3 wars and led a team of SEALs into Afghanistan in 2009, earning a Silver Star, Bronze Star, and other awards and distinctions. He is the author of the best-selling book, Unbreakable, A Navy SEAL's Way of Life, and he's also written and published Three Simple Things. He has trained thousands in leadership. He's the host of the Unbreakable Podcast. We're delighted to have him on today. I'm excited for you to hear his story of how important failure is in becoming successful. Thom Shea, welcome to Rocket Motivation.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate you for what you do.
Well, thanks. Thom, if you would, let's start by kind of telling the listeners where you are today in your life. You know, what do you do, family, how you spend your time?
Well, you know, I think I'm old. I don't know that I am comparable to others, but I'm 53 and I've been retired for 8 years, and I would not have imagined that I would have moved from California to Greenville, South Carolina, and kind of restarted a life. I have 3 kids. My daughter is now graduated from West Point, and she's an Apache pilot, and my middle boy is going to Clemson. And my youngest is starting high school. And that's the best way to start all over again.
Yeah, there you go. Well, at least you don't have really little ones.
You know, I'm glad I don't. I'm glad I was gone in combat when the kids were less than 5, because that's mom time. That's not dad time.
Yeah, I got you. Well, Thom, what I want to talk about, and you know, Rocket Motivation is all about stories of overcoming adversity. And you know, when I did the introduction, you know, I read all the great stuff you've done in your life. But what I'd like to go back is I want to talk about your failures, or have you talk about your failures and how your failures shaped your life. And if you would, let's go back to West Point to start, and then you can take us through how you became a Navy SEAL. Mm-hmm. Just kind of give us the story.
What happened to me happens to every man and woman that starts something hard. And I was a great football player. I had a full ride to Tennessee, and I chose to go to West Point, probably because my dad had gone. And so I show up at West Point, really wanted to be in the military. Everything was progressing pretty well. The end of my junior year, things fell apart for me. And when I was young, I couldn't accept that to be true. Now that I'm older, I realize that, you know, youth sometimes has collapsing things that happen. And I just kind of got down on myself, and ended up how that manifested is I failed out of West Point in English, and I was turned out, and I went back home with my tail between my legs. And a lot of people don't recover from that. And had I not had really supportive parents, and what I mean by supportive is Dad said, well, here's the deal. It can't get worse unless you die, and you have 6 months, and then you have to start another lifestyle. So he gave me time to recover. And during that time of recovery, he never was down on me. He said, you know, this is what happens to people, and you should try something very hard. And I'm like, Dad, I always wanted to be a SEAL. And he actually was not supportive of that, because he didn't want to see me fail again. And so I said, you know what, I'm going to do it, because that's the only thing that's been on my mind since I was probably 10 years old, was to become a Navy SEAL.
So did you know, I mean, when you went out for the SEAL team, did you know that your dad didn't want you to do that because he didn't want to see you fail? Oh,
he made that very clear. He said, you can't recover many times from failing at the level that if we try something and then you fail. But part of me, I didn't know that it was the right thing to do. I was just tired of living with the thought that I wanted to do something, and I was not either supported, or I had not made the choice earlier. So I chose to go in the SEAL teams, or commit to go in the SEAL teams, without having the ability to pass the physical tests. And I couldn't swim very well, which, you know, why would anybody want to be a SEAL who wasn't comfortable with the water? And I always laugh at that, because I really could not pass the test when I signed up for entry into the SEAL teams. And then I made it to training, so to speak. And that simple thing that I learned is you got to practice more than anybody else if you want to do something hard. So I practiced swimming every day until I actually showed up to training. And a lot of people don't like that attitude, but I was relentless, and I had given up a lot of things and a lot of opportunities that were presented to me that I said, I'm here to be a SEAL. All these other things don't matter. So that takes us to, everybody has those cool stories, but what I think is the real human story is I show up to SEAL training in class 195 and started that class, made it to Hell Week, and got a concussion during Hell Week. And they said, here's the deal. You either quit or you can start again. And a lot of people don't start again. And I said, I'm not going to quit. So they gave me an opportunity to start again. And I started in class 196. And then 5 weeks later, I made it to Hell Week, and I dislocated my right shoulder, and I was in the hospital. And the instructors show up to the hospital, and so they said, we've already done your paperwork because you can't recover from a shoulder injury. And I said, I'm not going to sign it, and I'm not going to quit. And they're like, okay, well, you don't have to start the next class because it starts tomorrow. So you can start in class 198, which was, I think, 6 more weeks or 7 weeks later. And so I got some time to recover and was able to start again in class 198.
Let me ask you this, because I'm sure a lot of the listeners don't know what Hell Week is. Explain what Hell Week is.
Well, SEAL training is a 6-month-long, they call it basic training, but it's the first training that you do in the SEAL teams. And it's 6 months long, divided into 3 phases. The third phase is where you learn how to shoot and blow up stuff and how to navigate. The second phase is where you learn how to dive. And the first phase is the big crucible of learning. So what they do in first phase, they have you 5 weeks of preparing for Hell Week. And Hell Week starts on a Sunday night and it ends on a Friday. And they give you every possible reason to quit physically and mentally. So they put you through very, very difficult, like unwinnable situations for 5 days just to see who makes it through. Like they're really uncommitted to you at all as a human being until you make it through Hell Week. And so you don't get any sleep. They feed you a lot to keep your engine going. And that's the only thing they do. And then they just literally make everything go wrong in your life, like your ability to function, your ability to think straight. So that is the Hell Week that I was talking about.
What percentage of people that start into the Navy SEAL training, what percent makes it through Hell Week?
The average is 12% that make it through. The other 88% do not make it through. They quit or get injured.
And tell us what happens when you're back in for the third time.
I just was not willing to give up, and I had every reason to give up. So I got a concussion. I got a dislocated shoulder. The third class, I got pneumonia, and they pulled me out of training because I passed out and ended up in the hospital. And then they said, all right, are you ready to quit? I'm like, I'm not ready to quit. And at that point in time, I'd been the only person that they had allowed to do 3 Hell Weeks. And since they knew I wasn't going to quit, they offered me the 4th one. And I'm like, I'm ready to go, but I can't function. And I had a week to recover from pneumonia, and I don't think I ever really did. So I started up in class 198, made it through 5 weeks of training. And I went from being really competitive until then, but with pneumonia, you can't compete with anything. And so I was the second or third last in the class on everything that was graded, and they didn't really care. So they punished me just the same. And so I made it to Hell Week again and made it to Wednesday night. All I had to do was make it 2 more hours, and I would have rolled forward. Like Wednesday night is the roll forward if you have an injury. And I woke up in the hospital with all 5 of my lobes of my lungs about 45% infiltrated with fluid. And so I stayed in the hospital until all that fluid was gone. And by the time that my stint in the hospital was over, I had been kicked out of the SEAL program.
So now you're 0 for 4.
0 for 4, 100% 0 for 4, like an abject failure. And literally, that was the hardest thing I've ever experienced in my life, was failing the second iteration. Failing BUD/S was different than failing West Point, but I felt like I had failed. I'd proven that I couldn't do something at West Point. I had proven that I couldn't do something in the teams or try to make it into the Navy. And I had one person that came along and said, here's the deal. You don't need to quit now. I'm like, well, they just kicked me out and there's no way I can get back for 2 years. And he said, either you quit or you continue. And that is a very important bit of information to give to somebody. Either you quit or you continue. It's that simple in life. Most people just pick quitting. And so every day for 9 months straight that I was actually working in the Navy, I went to my boss's office and asked him to send me back to training. And he gave me a direct order to stop doing that. And I kept doing it. And he finally demoted me in rank. And I kept doing it. And one day he walked out and said, you're either the dumbest or the most persistent human I've ever met. And here's your authorization to go back. So I made it back 9 months later and started class 207. And we started out with 111 guys and we graduated 11.
And you're one of those.
One of the original 11 from class 207.
Has anyone ever been given the option to try this for 5 times?
No, I'm the only one that's been in 5 hell weeks.
Yeah.
And they don't allow you to do it anymore. One is they don't need people anymore because there's so many guys trying to be in the program that they don't allow people to have a bunch of opportunities. Because back when I went through, nobody could even get into the program, but there's a lot more. And they know that it makes you, with all the brain studies that they've done since all the combat since 2001, they don't allow you the mental beatdown that happens in Hell Week more than twice.
So you go in, this is your 5th time, Hell Week starts, you know this is it. I mean, what's going through your head when you know this is it? I either make it or I don't.
What I had not done in the first 4 is be patient. Like I wanted to be the best. But be the best mentality is the worst part of being successful. Like being the best is the enemy of real success. So I was patiently telling myself, the only thing that matters is you stand here at the end. It doesn't matter if you win anything. It doesn't matter if anybody knows who you are. It doesn't matter if you stand out, but you make sure that no matter what, you're at the very end of the training. I call it patience.
So only 11 out of your class make it through. What is it about it, though, that is so difficult? I mean, is it the physical and mental and everything? Or, I mean, that is such a low percentage. I mean, why is it so hard?
Well, it's physically very, very difficult. Like it weeds itself out physically. Mentally, no matter how hard it is physically, it's 3 times as hard mentally. Like you really want to quit. They give you solutions that are not possible to survive in. Like your brain doesn't think it's possible. They make you so cold that you wish something would come along and pull you out. And not a lot of people can manage being so cold that they don't want to be there anymore. Most people, they get ice on their finger and they retract. So the pain of the coldness, the pain of every single day, not every day, but you get 5 days of training and then you get a weekend off and 5 days of training and a weekend off. But that repetitive, every single day you go to work, it's unwinnable and unbeatable. That drives people crazy. Like people who are really successful come. The great athletes don't make it through training because they're used to winning and they don't let you win ever. And there's a reason for that you don't learn until later. But imagine not doing well at anything you do for 6 months. And imagine waking up every day not really wanting to be there. And that mental beat down, most people are not used to. So they program that into the training simply because when you figure out that the only thing that matters is stay there and keep moving forward no matter what. Doesn't matter how anybody feels. It matters that you made a promise and that you're going to keep it in the face of all the adversity that the world gives you, which I think it's a great thing.
Did you ever consider giving up when you were on that 5th time?
Yes. Oh, hell yeah. Any day that ends in Y, I feel like I want to give up. Don't you? I just don't. I don't listen to it.
Yeah.
I acknowledge it. Thanks for sharing, bro. I'm going to keep moving.
Yeah. Well, that was what I want to know. I mean, how is it, though, that you want to give up, but you just don't? You don't quit. What's it about you, what's inside of you that you keep moving forward?
I had failed. And I didn't like the feeling of what it was like to fail out of West Point and then have to face my parents and my friends and myself. And I had failed out of the training the first time and everybody thought poorly of me. And I never wanted that experience again. And failing and quitting ended up in the same spot. So I'm like, I'm not going to quit. I would rather just die so that I didn't have to experience that. And the only thing that separates me from, I don't think anybody else, but what I had learned that failing was miserable, I had just decided that I was never going to quit to experience that again.
Right. And, on this whole concept of not quitting, and, you and I have talked before, we're recording this today. And, I broke my neck playing high school football, was paralyzed from the neck down, was fortunate to be able to walk again. And I've had people come up to me and say, well, man, you're something, you just never gave up. You didn't quit. But it never even dawned on me, once I got out of the hospital and rehab, I was in high school. I mean, I just started putting my life back together, but never once did I think, well, hey, I'm thinking about quitting today. I got up and just continued to do my life, put my life back together, college, career, and move on. But then I'm thinking maybe, and I think this kind of may dovetail into your book, Three Simple Things, this concept of not quitting. It might be more that, when you think about doing tasks, that you don't quit, like, or setting goals and not quit versus just living your life. Kind of tell us what Three Simple Things is all about, that book.
Boy, what you said earlier when you were talking about yourself is the key. And so all the graduates who have completed SEAL training and have retired at 20 years in the SEAL teams. So a bunch of corporations are trying to figure out what is the thing that is here with these people that survive combat, that thrive in really yucky situations and do it for 20 plus years. What is it that we can learn from them? So what you told about you is the same similarity of what really thrives during bad situations. It's the inability to make the interpretation that there's any other options. So the reason why people quit is because the option over there seems better. So you didn't feel like there was another option, so you didn't take one. And in the SEAL teams, they give you a million options, so you stop taking them. Just stay here and move forward. Like, don't quit and go over there. Don't go think about your wife. Stay here present in this moment, because this is where we need you as a leader or an operator. So the inability to just, there's a million options, I'm just going to choose this one. That is really what success is about, both in the SEAL teams and how you've lived your life, in Thom Shea's opinion. And everybody can actually do that. The reason why people flounder is because they choose a million options and don't do any of them well. I don't know if that's the best answer, but that's what I know to be true now.
Is that the concept in Three Simple Things?
Well, so the concept in Three Simple Things is what I found to be true, both my 23 years in the SEAL teams, and now I guess we've trained like 720 leaders, and my partner and I train leaders. We train leaders to really be great leaders when things are not going well. So I call that concept leading in chaos. So what I found that is actually learnable, that makes life really good, is making things simple. So the process of making things simple, and I didn't know the number was 3. It was taught to me as a young SEAL that humans cannot deal with more than 3 things. Like, as a leader, you can't lead more than 3 people. Those 3 people can lead 3 other people, but you cannot lead more than 3 people. Come to find out, physically, you can't deal with more than 3 things. So when you compile all this information of a lifetime of trying to live in at the top of my game, so to speak, and helping other people do the same thing, the concept of 3 came out. So what becomes true is that I call them the 5 aspects of life. Your health is one, your ability to learn is one, your ability to work is another one, the relationships you have is the 4th one, in your spiritual life. So those 5 areas, you can't do more than 3 things per area. If you can boil it down to 3 things, your life is magical. And so what I do is, when I train leaders here, what we're going to do is we're going to make your life simple. We're first going to get your health in check. Like, you're going to be in command of even with your ability to move for an hour is vital to you for the rest of your life. An hour a day of movement is one thing you can do in your health. The second thing is your ability to stretch and be mobile. Whether you're partly paralyzed or not, you still have to force yourself to be mobile. And then hydrate. The body really likes to have fluid in it, and it doesn't like to be dehydrated. So those are the 3 simple things in health. If you do that, most of the problems that you face in health are gone. Call it 3 simple things on a baseline. And boy, by the way, you don't really need to do more than that to do well.
Such an interesting concept of making your life better by making things more simple or simpler.
Well, I mean, there's a billion things that we get shot at with. You look at a forest and you see a million trees. Wise people see 1 or 2 trees. Like, I want to walk to that tree. And so what I found to be true is that really great people are not always letting themselves be bombarded by all the data. They're finding particular data points and then engaging those. And the reason why I wrote 3 Simple Things is because what's in it is actually learnable, as opposed to some things are not so learnable. And anybody that can open their eyes can do it. And it's very true that simplicity wins and complexity loses.
Let's talk about your book, Unbreakable. How did that book come about?
Oh boy. So in 2009, when I was a platoon chief, or I was a ranked chief in the teams, I had 22 SEALs that I was going to take into combat. And so in 2009, we were going to go to Afghanistan. And then it was a very, very dangerous place. It probably still is, but it was very dangerous then. And my wife, Stacy, knew that it was dangerous. And she had asked me to write messages to her and the kids in case I didn't survive. So that to me was a harder task than combat, because I had failed out of West Point, and she wanted me to be able to write intelligently to her and the kids. I'm like, I can write in crayon if you want. So it ended up being every single time I would go out on a mission, I would write some thoughts down and send Stacy, my wife, an email filled with like unconfirmed messages without any data to them or any information to them. And then I would come back and I would share really the rawness of what it was like to be in combat with Stacy and the kids. And they were all ages at the time, and they were young. And so it was 6 months of those communications from, I'm going to die in the next 5 days. Here's what I think is important, and please go do this in case I don't come home. But then I came home. And then when I came home, Stacy said, I would like you to put that into a manuscript. I'm like, I can't spell manuscript. What do you want me to do? She was put it into a book form. So it was 4 years of her really beating my butt to put it into a book form. And I had finally completed it, and she took it from me, and I thought it was done. And she had a professional edit it, and she put it up on Amazon right when I retired without me knowing it. And for some reason, it struck a chord with a lot of men and women that have gone through a lot of adversity, and it made New York Times bestseller. And not because we knew what we were doing, more because I was just very plain and simple, and I used a lot of cuss words. So that's my claim to fame. I don't know if that explains it, but that's what we did.
It does. But so let me ask you this then. All right, based upon what you've been through and what you've learned in your life, what advice would you give to people that are going through tough times, that are facing adversity?
First of all, take a step back and find somebody who's going to support you. Like, don't do anything difficult by yourself. And then don't find the person who you actually like. Find the person who's going to be demanding of you to be better. Until you can do that, adversity will always be at your door.
Why is it that you think some people quit? Some people have that I'm not going to quit attitude, and some it's an easier thing to do. Why do you think that is?
I don't know if I have an easy answer for that. I know that the people who don't quit are used to adversity. They've hit bottom a couple times. The reason why people quit the first time is because they've never experienced, they didn't think it was going to get bad, and then it got bad. The people who don't quit, they've skinned their knee, and they've lost something, and they've had a girlfriend tell them no, and so they've faced adversity, they've done poorly. There's a clear indicator if you want to be really successful, you have to fail a bunch of times. So it's not really taught. But in the SEALs, all there is failure. They never let you win. So they never let you get complacent with feeling that you're winning. They always make you feel like it's lost, like you're going to lose unless you bring your A game all the time. And so that pulling away from bad situations is bred out of the SEAL teams. But most people don't get that. They get somebody to coddle them. Somebody tells them they can't do it, so they don't even try. They try twice instead of infinite tries. It's a terrible situation if nobody puts your ass back on the horse.
So, Thom, if somebody wants to buy your books, what's the best way they could do it?
Well, unbreakableleadership.com is our parent website. And on that, we have a signed copy if you want them. And they're on Amazon and Barnes & Noble and all the bookstores as well. But I'd love to sign a copy and talk to you about what you got from the book once you read it.
Yep, I definitely want to do that. And talk about your leadership course, too. If you've got some business leaders or anybody that wants to join in on your leadership course, how can they contact you to get involved with that?
Well, so the type of person that we train are usually people that have already been successful, and they find themselves kind of stuck in a rut. If you're 20 to 30, our training's probably not that advantageous to you, because we talk authentically about what's really going on in failure in leadership and in your life. And most young people can't tolerate that. Unless you've already won and are stuck, we're not the right people to train. And so unbreakableleadership.com is the venue in which you communicate with us. And we hold a training every month, and it's a seminar-based training where we get in a room and we engage at the leadership level, what it's like to win and lose.
Now, Thom, this is what I do with all my guests. I give them the parting shot. I know there's something that we hadn't discussed. I know you've got some great words of wisdom still in there that I hadn't pulled out of you. So take us off the show here and give us something good.
There is so much more in everybody than you could possibly know. Imagine what it would be like to operate at that level where what you were thinking about, you had the capability of doing. And that is amazing to me. So there's more in you, and I'm really interested in that.
And that's exactly why I asked that question, because I get great answers like that often. Well, Thom, thanks so much for coming on. It's been a pleasure having you on here. Your accomplishments are just phenomenal. But, what I love about it is how you got there. And it's the initial failure and learning from it, and then just doing great things in your life. So I just want to thank you so much for coming on.
Hey, thanks for what you do, and your story is majestic, and I appreciate that I can get to know you.
Well, I really appreciate that, and I definitely want to get a copy of your book, and I'll send you a copy of mine too if you have
Sure,
the time
I'd love it.
to read it. So thanks so much, and we'll be talking soon.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Just a great episode with Navy SEAL Thom Shea. His story emphasizes how important failure is in becoming successful. This wraps up this episode of Rocket Motivation. Next week's guest is Jennifer Smith. She's going to talk about the struggles she and her family went through during what she describes as her year of hell. What's great about her story following Thom Shea's is she's going to tell you how reading Thom's book, Unbreakable, completely changed her life. See you next week. Thanks for listening to the show. If you're interested in getting my book, Get Back Up, just go to Amazon and put in Get Back Up and my name, Rod Caden. It'll pop right up. I would love it if you would subscribe to the podcast and rate and review the show wherever you listen to your podcasts. I would really appreciate it if you'd share it with a friend. I would like as many people to hear my message as possible. And we'll see you next week. Never give up and always get back up.